Ahoy! Welcome to the Sea Captain Leadership Podcast with Phil Bender, where we help listeners navigate the uncharted waters of personal and professional growth. The Sea Captain Leadership Podcast is about sharing energizing stories of leadership development and the culture surrounding top-performing individuals and their businesses. We want to help you to take risks and build your vision by showing you how to break free of the boundaries that are holding you back. So today we welcome Kim and Joe Koenig to the Sea Captain Leadership Podcast. Kim and Joe have been married for more than 30 years, have 3 sons, just like Lisa and I, but they have 2 grandchildren, which is really cool. Joe's the president of Worldwide Technology in St. Louis. Joined the company in 1993 when it was a startup, so there's got to be an interesting trajectory there. He was the company's 15th employee and was instrumental in shaping and scaling its integrated management and leadership program, which serves as a foundation for the company's award-winning culture that positively impacts employees and extends to clients and communities. Today, the company is a global technology solutions provider with more than $20 billion in revenue. Kim holds a master's in public administration, and after a career in community development, she was the CEO of their home and raised their 3 boys until more than 5 years ago. She now serves as director of strategic initiatives at St. Louis's Jesuit High School, Smet, which of course is the first question everybody asks with people from St. Louis. And so we'll get that out of the way. Along with having successful careers, strong marriage, and raising a family, they've battled possibly the biggest challenge of all, Joe's cancer diagnosis. He was diagnosed with head and neck cancer in 2017 and was given a 50% chance of living beyond 5 years. This is an inspirational story. Can't wait for those of you out there today to hear about it. He and Kim took this adversity, they overcame it, and are transforming it into good. Not only did they beat the cancer, but they are helping others who are walking a similar path. Joe and Kim now share their story and are living testimony that resilience, perseverance, and positivity serve as a backbone for building a foundation for going toe to toe with serious health challenges and overcoming the adversity. It's great to have the 2 of you here today. We got a lot to cover, so let's get started. But I must say, just in the pre-interview, Joe, it was so exciting that we grew up in the same neighborhood. Weird. But it's great to have you both on.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah. So, it's fascinating, all the people that we know from our past, and even going to the same grade school. We're about a year apart. I'm sure I picked on you at one point, and to that extent, I am apologetic. Not really, but that is a weird connection. So let's start with your careers. You did the startup a year, I guess, a year after you met Kim. Okay, so she probably there's got to be a story there,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we have a lot of our listening audience are self-employed and in leadership roles, and they understand this unique set of circumstances of being an entrepreneur, the uncertainty of paydays. Why did you choose this approach rather than go to work for a more established firm?
Well, when I first graduated college in '87, I was trying to find a job and didn't really, couldn't really find one. So had to make ends meet and went into the construction business and worked there for about probably 4 or 5 months. In that time, I met Kim. She was a junior at St. Louis University where I just graduated. And then during kind of the early months that we started dating, I got an opportunity to work for a small consulting firm at that time, a small consulting firm called Telic, and that was about providing workforce management solutions to the telco industry. Learned a lot about the technology space inside of that. And then they were acquired by Computer Sciences Corporation, CSC, that went from a small consulting firm of about say 200 people to a 35,000, people organization with CSC. And again, started being on much more aggressive projects, long-term positions with some of the largest companies in the U.S. So again, learned a lot about the people side, the culture side, the technology side. That really kind of gave me the wherewithal to then make that jump to worldwide technology. And so the next question is why I made the jump, right?
Yeah, right.
Uh, from a 35,000 established consulting firm to 15 people startup. Well, one, the person who was a co-founder at Worldwide Technology, Jim Kavanaugh, who is our current CEO and co-founder, he and I roomed together in college and played soccer together at St. Louis University. So he was one of my best friends, and I've known him at that point since I was 18 years old. And we've always stayed in contact. He went and played pro soccer for a while. I went to work for CSC, and but we always said if something happened, we'd love to get back together and work together in the future. He then co-founded Worldwide, and he said, "Hey, I do not want you to join until we are stable." And I'm like, "Hey, that sounds good. I have a good job. I don't want to jeopardize that." And then he said, "All right, time is now. You need to come over." So did the interviews and then eventually went over there. And that was in June of 1993. And then being a very stable organization, in September of 1993, we almost went out of business. Uh, so I asked him what the definition of stability was, and I'm not sure he knew that.
Good one,
Uh,
yes.
right. So, but we worked through it, and I can get into more details about kind of how we got through that real tough period. But there was nothing simple about it. If you want me to keep going, or you want me to,
No, that's it. I want to give Kim a shot at
all right,
this
that's what I
because
thought.
I can only assume a couple things. Number one, I can't believe this guy talked you into coming over here. I'm sure that conversation happened a few times. Okay, and Kim, let's talk about this because how you had to be there had to be some doubts and stable employment and all these things and likely with Joe growing and then he takes this big risk. What was going on for you at that point?
Good question. So I was very excited about the possibility of Joe joining Worldwide and joining Jim there. Um, he was traveling a lot before he took the job, so I thought that was a major benefit about being home more. And we were also expecting our first child, and I had just finished graduate school and had a lot of grad loans to pay off, and pregnant and working, just making a ton of money at a non for profit. So uh, it was it was a little unsettling when Joe officially joined, and we realized that it was not as stable as we thought. Um, not Jim's fault. Obviously, he wouldn't have led Joe in that direction if he knew what was happening. But we were also building our first house. So we were very, very nervous about the future in so many ways, given him starting this new job and expecting our first child and building a house. So it was a very stressful time. We were really trying to be positive. Joe was the eternal optimist, and I was just kind of being carried along in that vein. But we can talk more later about this. But it was a tough time, and we had to put a lot of trust into what we hoped would unfold for us.
No, that's great. And and again, you knew as Lisa Bender knew with me that if you ask her what did she see in me when we were in high school and started dating, she would say potential. It's,
Agree.
and I think there's a little bit of that in your last statement, which I can appreciate. Let's talk a bit about your faith and background, which I think is really relevant. Kim, you moved 9 times before college, which you said uh, helped you walking into a new situation. You also went on a pilgrimage before Joe's diagnosis. Um, uh, Joe, looks like you had a real champion here and a strong support system. Let's talk about that. Kim, you first.
Yeah, I did. Phil, I moved. My dad was in health insurance, HMO creations. So we moved 9 times before I started at St. Louis University. And I think along the way, I didn't know really that it would be beneficial in my later life, but I had to have some degree of resiliency and learning kind of to make my own path and rely on myself and not others to carry me forward. So independence was learned for sure by moving so many times. And I came to St. Louis University and didn't know one person and came with one suitcase, which I think I hold a record for in freshman move-in. But my parents were
I've
in
never
the
heard of
middle.
it. That's for sure.
My parents were in the middle of another move when I started college, so all of my things except for one suitcase were in a
Wow.
moving van. So the moves were tough as a child growing up, but they really instilled some great values in becoming an independent person, and obviously helped me along the path that we forged with Joe's health crisis.
So what would you add to that, Joe?
Well, I tell you that's a tough life that she had, moving and all that. And I can't imagine. Remember, like as you know me, I grew up in St. Louis. I went to the grade school in St. Louis. I went to high school in St. Louis. I went to college in St. Louis, and never really moved out of St. Louis. I'd say that for a period of time at CSC, I lived in Denver for about 3 years, but I still was able to come home and actually had a condo back here. So never really moved or lived outside of St. Louis besides travel. So totally different environment. Not sure how that is how someone can do that. And it does to a point. I think it does open up a perspective on resilience that it takes to actually deal with that day in, day out. And then also meet new friends, meet new people, and then continue to acclimate in one city and the next city and school and so forth. So hats off to her to be able to do that. I'm just not sure I could have done that.
Yeah, it is interesting, having moved since, my first job out of college, I traveled 5 out of 6 weeks in a suitcase, so I am used to that, but they actually have to settle in and then build relationships. It is, and interesting enough, I expect you to say military background, but you didn't say that, right? Which is very, very common, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so, second part of this question, Joe, you obviously have a strong fortitude after your diligence in building, your career at WWT, and you've said that you have to count on others, but you have to always be accountable for your own journey. You said the first thing you say to people when you meet them after have met them after their cancer diagnosis is that they should really build their team and rely on their faith. Give me a little bit, give our listeners a little insight into your faith and leadership during your own cancer fight.
Yeah, so you mentioned 2017 was really a really, really tough year for me. Diagnosed in January while on vacation with the family, and didn't tell them for 5 days about this,
Oh,
and
wow.
just went about the normal vacation. I didn't want to ruin their vacation, so no one would have ever known that I was diagnosed on Monday, and I told Kim on Friday, and so that was my objective. Because I still, like she said, I'm a pretty positive person. Nothing I can do about it right now. When I get back to St. Louis, we'll do the CT and PET, and we'll figure out exactly what we're dealing with. So when that's the kind of my personality is really about positivity. So then to go through the hardship of multiple surgeries, losing over 60% of my tongue, and then a heavy dose of radiation, breathing through a trach and feeding tubes, was a real difficult time on every pain drug that you can imagine, from oxycodone to fentanyl to hydrocodone, lidocaine. It was a real painful, difficult experience for sure in 2017. And I always describe it as in 4 words. Number one, difficult, as I mentioned. Number two was very humbling, because when you get diet, someone says you have cancer and a 50% chance to live in 5 years. You start looking at things a bit differently in a humble fashion. And then the third thing, to your point around Kim, is I always say blessed. And people say,
Yeah.
what do you mean you were blessed? And I mean, you went through hell and back. And I'm like, well, I was blessed because one, I'm standing here talking to you right now. right? That's the first reason I'm blessed. And the second reason is I had an absolutely incredible support system led by Kim and our family and friends. I mean, that some people don't have. And I happen to be blessed with that. Also was blessed by my faith of what we focus on, the power of prayer, and then blessed by having great doctors and clinicians around me. So when you look at it holistically, I was a very blessed person in 2017. And then the fourth word is reflection. When you can't speak for a number of months, you think a lot, you reflect a lot on the past, the present, the future, and it starts putting things in maybe a different priority list, a different perspectives going forward. And then you have choices about what you want to do in life afterwards, but that's your choice. No one can make those for you during the treatments, during the recovery, during the post-recovery survivorship. Those choices are yours to make. But it's nice to have the team around you like Kim that helped me, had empathy for me, compassion for me, but also pushed me, challenged me to be a better person and keep focusing on the goals to be on the other side.
Yeah, and I can only imagine, Kim, because I'm gonna ask you about this, is, easy for you, Joe, to isolate and, not be open, especially when you're a gritty performer, and having those types of things hit you. So, Kim, talk about that, during that fight. Talk about your perspective. Talk about, the things you had to do. I'm sure you probably had to challenge him a few times on some things, right?
Yeah, I for sure. And I want to talk about an experience that I didn't know was going to help me so much, but it ended up being a very formative part of being prepared for what was ahead. I had the opportunity to go on a pilgrimage through my parish to Medjugorje, and I knew one person on the trip. It was the middle of winter. Everyone who knows me would never expect me to sign up to go to a colder place than St. Louis in the middle of January. And we had, for most of the time that we were there in our small little hostel that we stayed in, we had no heat. It was a tough time, um, because you were in conditions that were not very very great weather-wise. People around me, including me, were getting sick. It was kind of some warfare going on there, but we spent 8 days in this beautiful place that tens of thousands of people had gathered, because it was known for being a small town that Mary had appeared to village people. So there were just so many faith-filled people, and we got to experience mass in so many different languages, and it was a very uplifting, powerful spiritual experience. So I came back just with a new grounding of my faith, instilled there by what I was able to be a part of. And then fast forward, maybe almost a year to when Joe was diagnosed, I I fell on my faith, and my faith was so strengthened by my experience of that pilgrimage that I didn't know, what I was being used for and what that experience was going to mean for me. But clearly, it meant all the world of difference in me being able to be a strong person grounded in my faith to help Joe more along this journey. I was kind of a soldier, um, in working in whatever way I could and needed to help Joe, but I just was feeling like I had an armor around me from that experience that could help me going forward with Joe.
Well, that's outstanding and probably worth the whole podcast alone right there. Just the experience, almost premonition in a way that, that, pushed you to that risk taking, and then coming back and having to apply all of that, to what was going on around you. So when you talk about faith and you talk about team and a visionary life is a team sport. Um, and that's powerful. And appreciate you sharing all that. So, Joe, you're in remission now, and well, I guess you both are. As I think about it, you both are in remission. You both have been to places most people never go. I like to call it going into a really dark, scary room. You know the thing about these experiences, is that they afford you to the depth and knowledge to ultimately use to help others. So now you go through this whole process, and now your outward thought, outward thinking. And I understand now, Joe, from knowing you now, that you're active on boards of several local cancer support and research groups. I understand that you serve as a mentor to cancer patients of all ages. I'm sure you both do, spending time with them as they progress through their journey. Tell the listeners about this, and what's the most meaningful and rewarding part for you.
Yeah, so I'll jump in. Tim, you can chime in right after this. To me, like, I mentioned that, when you're reflecting on the 2017 and you have choices, one of the choices is how you're going to move forward, and be maybe impactful for others. And that choice I call survivor's obligation. To me, like I said, I was very blessed, and I feel obligated that I have to help in any way I can to whoever I can. And so, yes, I am. We definitely are involved in Siteman Cancer Center initiatives. I also sit on the CEOs Against Cancer Board in St. Louis for the American Cancer Society, and involved in other sub organizations as well. But one thing, and I love that they're very impactful for many, and we have many initiatives that are in play today. But I do really like speaking with cancer patients, like that to me, and some people that have gone through what I went through, they don't want to talk about it. It was so hard, and they just champ it out of their head, and they put their head in the sand, um, and don't want to speak with it ever again. I, on the other hand, I love speaking about it. I don't have one problem with it. I'm an open book, as Kim knows about this, probably more so than she wants me to be. But like when I love when patients, and I get referrals quite often, friend of a friend, from actually Siteman, wanting to, and other organizations that want me to speak to people. And every time I do, I learn something about them, about diagnosis, about personalities, about mental state, and so forth. And I try to help them get through. If they're in a dark place, I try to help them get out of that. And some of them are very positive, but vast majority of them are not in a good spot. And I try to just get them to the next state, focus on what's at hand, what goals are, and so forth, things that I went through. And like one person I'll share that I was asked by American Cancer Society to speak with them, her, and she was in remission, then had recurrence, and she was very frustrated and didn't want to fight anymore. And so they asked me to speak to her, and she asked me if she had a major attitude, type A, with me, and just said, I've heard your story. Why'd you fight? Because I don't want to fight anymore. And I'm like, okay, this is gonna be fun. And I'm like,
Right.
all right, let's talk. So what's your question? She goes, I want to know why you fought. And I go, okay, no one's ever asked me that question. Let me give you five reasons why. Number one, selfishly, I didn't want to die. That's simple. All right. I was 52 at the time, had many more years in front of me. That's number one. Number two is I have a wife and three boys. And I'm going to fight for memories. At 52 years old, I know my boys will eventually get married, have kids. I'm going to fight for those memories. Okay. So selfishly, as that's, I think those memories are important to me. Number three, I'm going to fight for all those people fighting alongside me with the same or different cancer diagnosis or other sicknesses. And I'm not giving up, and I don't want them to give up. So I'm going to fight alongside with them. It does take a village. And if you fight as a village, I think you have a much better outcome associated with that. And fourthly, I'm going to fight for those people who fought so valiantly with strength and hope and courage, but they didn't win. But they fought to the bitter end and don't want their names to go in vain. So I'm going to fight for their names. And then fifth, I don't know what the purpose is here right now, but I'm going to fight to understand what my purpose will be in the future. Those are the five reasons that I fought. And so as you have conversations like that to that individual or others, I think one at a time, if you just make that small little impact on their life at that point in time or that next day or the next week, I feel a lot more fulfilled with that purpose. And by the way, some of them go extremely well, and some of them don't. And they're probably of the half of the people of the 40 people that I've spoken to, probably 40 plus, half of them are not here. And so again, I go back to being how blessed I am. And but I also think I help those people, no matter if they're here or not. And a little piece that maybe just got them to smile or just spend time with their family without being in a hole. And so, I mean, that's the ultimate goal, to do whatever I can, to wherever I can, as much as I can.
Yeah, that's powerful. And again, there's so many gems in this podcast, but this thought of starts with self, then it goes to family, then it goes to other patients, then it goes our community. It's not even about me; it's bigger than me. Then it goes to those going through it, and then ultimately, you're not going to win every one of these conversations. And I talk about leadership all the time, is your ability to process disappointment. The more disappointment you process, the more you lead. And people look at me and they say, "Well, that's not very inspirational." I said, "That's because it's not. It's a part of the process." And if every day is like San Diego weather, you never appreciate a good day. And so you got to have some tough ones. Kim, what would you add to this? That was powerful.
I would say that Joe spends much more time talking to people who are on a journey such as his. But I feel like I had such a gift before Joe went through his surgeries and his radiation. We had someone who inspired us and walked with us and told us what was ahead, and really just tried to take away the fears that we had about the unknown. So we were so grateful for that couple. She was the caretaker, he was the patient, and they just really laid it out for us and were there for us as a resource and a friend anytime we had questions or just wanted someone to talk or cry with. So I feel like I'm so grateful for them and that experience that they offered us. I wanted to help that way as well. And that's what we've tried to do together, as a caregiver, or a Joe as a patient.
Yeah, fantastic. So let's wrap up question here. Leadership development's what we focus about here. You guys have exemplified that, and I appreciate you taking the time. Um, tell us, tell me about your three boys and in their journey now. Having to address this and go through it. Um, was it something that you thought through? Was it just reacting to what was going on? Tell us about their journey through all this.
Sure, I can start. So we, at that time, we had two in college, and we had our youngest was in fifth grade. He was 11. So that was difficult on trying to decide how much we wanted to tell them. We didn't want to be secretive, but at the same time, we didn't want to scare them and make them just very, very worried about our family and what was happening to their dad. So we shared and we were honest, but I don't think we overshared because we didn't want to put that on them. We had a child at home, as I just said, and we were lucky we had grandparents here. So he spent a lot of time with his grandparents because we didn't want him to be there for all that was just freshly happening with surgery and radiation. But when Joe came home and was further on in his recovery process, it was amazing because Luke was the youngest, and when Joe was going through speech therapy, Luke would be working with him on flashcards, like, "Dad, say it again." Nope, Dad, go back on that word. So they were all, they were all, instrumental in Joe's recovery. But for the surgery and therapy, it was tough for me. So I didn't really want to have them be very exposed to that part. But then on the flip side, kind of from the experience, we have two that are married, and in some just interesting, strange way that I didn't even think about. I feel like the boys and this whole experience have become to appreciate their roles as partners in a marriage and what their vows really represented, and especially after they witnessed what we went through as a family.
Yeah, that's awesome, and, I almost got emotional as you were talking about the going through the flashcards. I mean, that got to me. I think Joe got to you a little bit too, I think. Um, what would what would you add to that?
Well, trust me, the word humbling that I
Yeah.
mentioned before is when your 11-year-old's helping you with your speech homework. Is very, very humbling.
Yeah,
And
right.
by the way, making fun of me in the process. And I think
Oh.
of one example. Dad, say dog, and I would say dog. No, 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 no. That's say it again. Dog. No, you have to say it back. I'm gonna come over the table. I'm gonna knock you out. So it was definitely humbling. But I'll tell you, adding to Kim's point, I agree with everything. Well said. But I'll go fast forward to today and what those boys are doing and how I think that situation impacted them. Our oldest Jake has a podcast for St. Louis City SC. And in that podcast, they do a Hope for the Holidays event, ending events, and it raises funds for Siteman Cancer Center, specifically head and neck cancer. And the show that they put on down at Union Station is absolutely incredible. At 30 years old, I mean, that is just unbelievable to have that mindset to want to give back based on maybe what they've seen happen to me and other experiences that they've had, which I think is huge. And then the middle son and my youngest son also do a podcast, St. Louis Blues podcast. And they actually are involved in giving back as well with my oldest son. So I think that to be that young and to be thinking about the importance of community and giving back, I'll tell you, I am so proud of what they represent every day and what they've learned over the last decade or so and how they're putting that into practice. It just makes parents very proud.
Wow. Well, I tell you what a special podcast here. I think our listeners are going to really enjoy and be inspired by just your level of transparency here and the inspirational message. Um, we'll put your contact information on the website and the show notes. Is there anything else you'd like to mention before we let go? And then I have one very important question at the end for you.
Yeah, my part I guess area would be is that when you think about leadership and all the things that I experienced at Worldwide, and I'll just do the worldwide technology side here, but for a second, is what I didn't know, Phil, that I think I know so much better now is the importance of culture inside of leadership. And that culture has to start with the top and it has to permeate down. So we have to live by the values that represent our company, and we have to be driven by the business concepts to run our business effectively. And those leadership qualities like humility, like trust, like integrity and teamwork are key values that represent Worldwide. And I'll tell you, over the last 35 years, 35 years plus, I've been in this industry, the knowledge and importance and understanding of those concepts that impact the business is just incredible. So just wanted to throw that out there from a leadership side that you have. And by the way, I have to continue to learn. You never know everything. It seems like I've learned something every day by listening, and twice as much as I speak. But I think there's a lot of important characteristics that have to be lived every day by the leaders at the top.
Yeah, well said and well done. Now the I can't leave the listeners. You went to St. John's Elementary, is that correct?
Only for kindergarten.
Okay, so I may let you off the hook on this. What was the mascot of St.
Oh,
John's Elementary?
all right. So let's see. I was like 4 or 5 years old at the time, Phil. So I'm going to say I don't know.
All right. It was in fact the Roadrunner, and I'm gonna let you
Oh,
off the
that's
hook
right.
because you only went for a year.
Yeah.
But I wanted to share that with the group. Pleasure having you both on. Um, Godspeed to both of you and your pursuits. And thanks again for being on with us.
Thanks.
Thank you,
So appreciate the conversation.
Thanks for joining us for this edition of the Sea Captain Leadership Podcast. If you found the conversation valuable, please like, share, and post a review on your favorite podcast app. To learn more about Sea Captain and its high-performance coaching programs, visit us at seacaptaincoaching.com. The link is in the show notes. You can also follow us at Sea Captain Coaching on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Thanks again for listening. Wishing you fair winds and a following sea on your journey.